So this the government operations and regulations. Today is October the 1st, and we're going to look at public comment. I have nobody signed up, so we'll move along from that. And then I put together a consent calendar. RS 2024-735 and RS 2024-755. I'll read those in a second. Does any of those need to come off?
755? I have 735. I don't have a 55.
52, 35 and 52.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll read the captions. RS 2024-735's resolution exempting core located at 975 Chapel Avenue. Minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. Pursuant to 7.08.90E Metropolitan Code. And RS 2024-752, not 5, Olivia, approves the appearance of a letter from Metro IT Services Department, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development regarding connecting community facilities grant, instruct to improve digital access.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, open for discussion? No discussion? And have a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any not voting? Okay, so and then we have item 2, BL 2024-478, Councilmember Allen. Amends Chapter 6.28 for Metropolitan Code pertaining to short-term rental properties.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, what is it?
Councilmember Allen?
Would you like me to address that? Thank you for bringing this off consent. So this is a bill that is just updating the existing short-term rental regulations in response to enforcement challenges that the Codes Department has had, mostly dealing with owner-occupied permits as opposed to non-owner-occupied permits. Right now, we require 2 pieces of identification to prove that you actually occupy the property. Not just because there's a difference in where you can get an owner-occupied permit as opposed to a non-owner-occupied permit. It's much more limited. And so this would require 5 pieces of identification instead of the 2 that we currently allow because they are too easy to fraudulently obtain, and that has been a big issue. So that's the main driver behind it. There are a couple of other smaller things that it also does, but I'll answer this question and come back if the chair would like. Or
Say that again. I didn't quite understand it.
So
five pieces to prove that you do occupy it.
Yes.
Not that you own it.
that you own it and occupy
That
it.
you are the person who owns it and is there
And-
while you're doing it.
And that
Okay.
it is your primary residence.
Okay, gotcha.
And I have an amendment that I will offer that actually uses that language because Ann Mickelson is here, who has been involved in the legal defense of some of our challenges to some fraudulent owner-occupied permits. And there are, legal terms that imply certain things that have made it difficult for them to revoke some permits that should be revoked. So we're working with them to ensure that the language we have is very precise and gives them the legal language they need to revoke permits when people don't actually live there.
Follow-up question, Ms. Lee, go ahead.
And please excuse me if I should know this already. But when we first did this, didn't we grandfather some in?
So
And
initially,
how does this affect any that were there when we first did the
Thank you.
gotta live there?
That's a great question. When we initially created the bill, you could have owner-occupied in any residential area, and you could have a limited number of non-owner occupied. And when that ceiling was hit within each census tract, then there were no more non-owner occupied permits to be issued. As this grew in Nashville and we sort of learned what we had created, the council made some good course corrections, one of which to say, we don't need the non-owner occupied in residential districts anymore. However, at that point, the state intervened and said any permit that has already been issued is grandfathered in under the rules that were in place when you got your permit. And so the people at codes now have a notebook of all the different iterations of what our codes have been so that they can check and see what rules each property is subject to. So we do not lightly change these rules, which is why I convened a task group of owners, neighbors, and realtors, as well as the people from codes, and met and got their input for over the period of close to a year before we finally came forward with this. So we're trying to do it so that we don't create a whole, a little cascade of new sets of rules. So hopefully we'll be able to incorporate whatever ideas come up as we go through this process.
Okay, one more, go ahead.
Just to clarify what I heard, so this does not affect people who were grandfathered in unless ownership changes.
That is correct.
Okay.
If they obtained it fraudulently, we don't feel like they should be
that's
able to
something else.
maintain
That's-
that. And so we are working to ensure that, that we've given the codes department good tools to issue permits to people that truly own the property and that is their primary residence.
Okay, I think
But
my
to
answer
not-
is just yes
Yeah.
for that part. Okay, because you did too much confusion.
So the answer
Ms. Webb, you still have a question?
Well, I was just asking, I remember reading it, what did you add, what are you adding for identification?
We actually did not add any new things, although I have an amendment that would change the language from tax. I think right now the language says tax identification for a W-2. Let's see, what does it say? Davidson County voter registration, Internal Revenue Service tax reporting W-2 form. We are changing that language to say forms such as W-2 or 1099. So that's actually the only addition. All of those pieces of identification have been there before, but you could cherry pick the two, including a driver's license. And, our county clerk has done a fantastic job of making it easy to update your driver's license. And so a number of people were fraudulently changing the address on their driver's license, come back and getting their permit, and then changing it, a month later to get another permit.
I was going to ask.
So they can still use their driver's license, but they can't just use two things now. So we've just made it harder to fraudulently obtain an owner-occupied permit.
Do I need to get somebody to move this to get the amendment added, and then we vote on it as, okay.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, for example, like what a 5 IDs would show?
So, there's got it right there. I think I've got it too. They're actually two groups now, and Group A is Tennessee driver's license, other valid state of Tennessee ID card, Davidson County voter registration card, internal revenue tax reporting, now such as a W-2 or 1099, current voter vehicle registration or title, 2 from that group, and then 3 from Group B, which includes current automobile, life, or homeowner's insurance policy, paycheck stub, bank statement, current employer verification of residential address, and I think that's it. Or you can, if you have a letter from your employer on their letterhead, you can use that. So, and this is kind of a standard menu of identifications. It's not that different from what the state of Tennessee requires for you to get your real ID.
They don't require 5 though, right?
They require, they're approving different things, but they require different things. One's for residency, one's for citizenship or something.
Yeah, I've never heard of 5 requirements for anything, and I'm wondering if that will exclude certain people.
That's a great question. I have sent this to Turk to get their input on it, and they responded back that they were comfortable with the list that I had given. But I welcome input from any other group that's, which is one of the reasons that we tried to open up more options on the tax reporting forms. I mean, initially we tried to be generous to make it so that we did not exclude anybody. However, people have taken advantage of that generosity. And Ann Mickelson is here, who has been part of the legal team that is just trying to defend, you don't do the defense in
I
court,
don't
but
do
you have.
litigation. Yeah.
But if you could speak just a little bit to the difficulties that we've had in revoking permits that we have very good reason to suspect were fraudulently obtained, but we are not able to revoke them because.
Right. So I do client advice for the short term.
Could you introduce yourself so everybody
I'm
knows?
sorry, I'm Ann Mickelson with Metro Legal, and I do client advice for the short-term rental appeals board. And we have these cases come up fairly regularly where, we're complaint-driven, so neighbors will complain about a big party house, big parties, and it will turn out that when we do a little deeper digging, and the STRP staff there is very good at this, and they look at a whole bunch of different public records, and they realize the person actually lives in Florida, and perhaps they even have like a homestead, attribution for their Florida property, but they're claiming that they live in Tennessee, and they were able to get, once you own a property, it's pretty easy to get a driver's license with that property address on it, and then from there you can get other ID, so it can make it seem like you live at that house, but you really don't. You rent it out 365 days a year, but you're claiming it's owner occupied. So that's the kind of fraud we're trying to address with these changes, and though I know a lot of neighborhoods get really upset about this, and a lot of neighbors, a lot of residents of Davidson County don't like those kinds of houses in their midst, especially when they're fraudulently obtained permits. So that's the kind of issue we're trying to address.
And is that where this stems from?
Yeah, it's the fraud. And there, it's pretty regularly something that we see come before the board. And the board, I think, does a pretty good job of looking at the evidence that the staff brings to them and saying, hey, this is just not very credible. Like, you have this evidence, but then I see that you live in Florida, right? Because I see boom, 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 like 10 things over here in Florida that show that you live there. So they weigh the evidence and they determine whether that revocation was appropriate, if it's challenged to the board.
Go ahead.
This is my last question.
Go ahead.
Is there an allowance for whoever the reviewer is to waive? Like, if you see, I honestly think this person does live there. They got 4 of the 5, but they're older, so they don't have a W-2. They don't, some things they may not have. Is there room? Do you have leeway? Can you?
So, and those are good questions to ask about the Group A and Group B items. If someone would have a driver's license or an identification card, voter registration, motor vehicle registration or title. So, you can think about like whether or not people would have 2 items from that group.
I would think about someone like my mother.
Yeah,
who
older might not.
might not have that. So I'm saying, if you say, well, look, this lady is 88 years old, I see her, well, or whatever. I see this, I see a bill. A couple, just say you get 4 out of 5 or 3, but you feel certain. Can you waive? Can you say, can you borrow a little check on it and everything?
Well, that would be like, there could be, you could move around some of these documents or add in some language giving the zoning administrator some discretion.
But that's not currently you would have to have the 5 under the way that it's currently drafted.
So I do intend to defer this after I put the amendment on it, so that we can continue to look into whatever questions come up. So we can look into ways to do that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bent.
Just really quick. Would this individual that she described even be questioned? Because there's not going to be any Florida or Georgia interests that pop up. She's not even going to be on your radar.
That's a prerequisite, isn't it?
Oh, yes, these are, these are what you have to supply when you
So if you were
apply for that.
a brand new applicant.
Okay, if I can get somebody to move the amendment so we can get that before us.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Vote on the amendment?
What is it the amendment actually does?
So the amendment, again, working with, this bill was written back in the summer, and we deferred it for a while, again, just to allow people to have time to look at it. And in that process, the legal team that has defended this came back with some specific language about moving the words permanently reside out and replacing that with have as your primary residence. Because that just goes down a different path legally that doesn't get into, people can say, if it says permanently reside in state law, that somehow connects with your domicile, and your domicile can be anything you intend to return back to. And that has just led to too much ambiguity, which has made it very difficult. Again, because these state law, when we were preempted by the state, they allowed the property owners to appeal to whatever court they wanted to go to. So if it starts in environmental court, and in environmental court, it has been difficult to defend the words permanently reside. So we are changing that to primary residence. That's the key thing.
Go ahead.
And in that terminology of primary residence, that would allow someone to actually, like, say, go to Europe for a month or whatever. And during that time, are they allowed to continue to rent while they're gone and not in that primary residence? Okay.
That's correct.
Any other discussion? All those in
So,
favor?
I do intend to defer, but I do not want you to defer in committee because I do want to have the public hearing and get the amendment on there. So I would ask for you to approve the amendment. Both the bill and the amendment.
Yes. So, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone not voting? Okay. Now we got the bill before us as amended. Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Anyone not voting? All right. That adjourns our meeting.
Thank you.